are people who live in the Word. We believe God's Word is true. Now, if you remember this past Sunday, if you were here, I was ministering to you the things God was showing me when He had corrected me about He is the God of the impossible. And I used to think of it as we'd get into certain situations and He'd be watching us and we'd come to faith and all of a sudden He'd have a rumble or something in Him and He'd release a miracle against an impossible situation. But then the Lord spoke to me, clear as anything. He said to me, Chris, nothing is impossible to me.
Right.
And it was like, it just changed my whole mind. I mean, I heard what He was trying to say. He's saying, you think things are impossible. That's why it's hard for you.
Right.
Nothing's impossible for me.
Right.
I don't see impossibility.
So good.
And He was saying, in the spirit realm, in the kingdom of God, in the whole realm where our spirit is seated with Christ, He said, there are no impossibilities there. Nothing is impossible. He says, to man in the natural realm, things are impossible. He says, I want you to take from me and pull down into the natural realm. Nothing is impossible on earth as it is in heaven. Pull it down.
Yeah.
Release the impossible. Isn't that awesome? Now, if you could just hear that and meditate on that and realize creating the impossible to the human mind is difficult. Creating the impossible to the believer is supposed to be what we do.
Yeah.
Our lives are supposed to be miraculous.
That's right.
A lot of believers don't live miraculous lives.
Yeah, that's true.
They don't. They live carnal lives. Their mind is fraught with crime, problems, difficulties, struggles, bills, thoughts that are ungodly, and just allowing themselves to be almost like naturalized when they have a beautiful spirit inside. I'm not going to take time today, but I can give you about 35 scriptures that proof positive that you can walk in salvation and you can walk away and end up in big trouble. If you continue in the faith, Jesus said. And but a lot of people, they think that when they pray this prayer called the sinner's prayer, which there's no such thing in the Bible, just so you know.
Right.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying there's no such thing as a sinner's prayer. Maybe it's a sinner's awakening, but there's not a prayer that can save anybody.
True. Right.
But there is a revelation from heaven that can save everybody.
Yeah.
It's a revelation. It's a realization of what God did in Christ. And when you see that, you recognize what happened and you surrender yourself to it.
Amen.
When that happens, you're saved. Whether you prayed at a meeting or whether you're in a car or at home on your bed reading the Bible or just sitting there talking with God. It doesn't matter how it happens. It just matters when the spirit of life leaves the heavenly realm and comes into you through that revelation as you surrender to it. So that's miraculous.
Yeah. Right.
I'm always perplexed at the rough, tough sinner who you can't picture getting saved when they get saved. I mean, sometimes family members and in-laws are the hardest to imagine getting saved because you're so close to them. You get bit by them. You get pushed around by them. There's problems there. There's things that happen. Even if you love them, you still have these feelings like, God, how are you ever going to reach them? Because they're so snarly and mean, and they just sometimes don't want to listen to anything. And my own father-in-law, he was a really nice man in many, many ways. But he was grumpy. And he didn't talk. He'd stare at me sometimes. One time I borrowed one of his tools and didn't bring it back quick enough. Well, I found out how important the tool was. And so I was like, whoa, I don't want to get on the wrong side of this guy. And because it's your elder, someone older than you, you want to respect them and treat them with dignity and honor, even if they don't treat you that way sometimes. And I remember one time I was thinking about punching him. And I'm about 1.5 feet, 2 feet taller than him. And I'm thinking, I'm standing there looking at him down. And he's going, and he was in charge and he knew it. And I was like, man, I just could squash you right now. Because something was going on and I didn't like it. And when I walked away and I was praying for him, I was like, God, I don't know how you can save this man, but you got to save this man. But there were times when I was under the heavy burden of his problems. And then there were a whole bunch of other things about his existence. Like he was really into drinking, and therefore there was stuff that involves drinking when you have too much drink that causes all this stuff to happen. And it was horrible. And sometimes I was there with my little kids and Marge. And now Margie grew up with it, so she had a higher level of tolerance for it. But in our house, nobody got drunk. We weren't saved, but we weren't living like that. And so to me, it was like, what is this problem? Why are we acting this way? And then the dirty jokes start and all the stuff, and the corruption starts to magnify. And then there's aliens, and there's things, and so it's like, how many times can you encounter this? And I think, all right, so sometimes I had to make an announcement. Look, if we don't simmer down, I'm taking my kids to get out of here because I'm not going to have influence like this. So I know where my authority was, but they didn't like that. Sometimes they look at me like, you and your religion. And my poor mother-in-law was tormented because she loved Jesus, but she was such an accommodator of the family. She would do everything they wanted to make it all party happy. And then she'd be convicted by us, the poor thing, So, it was impossible until the day it got possible. I remember we were in the kitchen, and I invited some ministers over to their house for dinner. I says, why don't you have these guys over for dinner? And they said, okay. So they cooked the dinner, and accommodation. And we're sitting there, and the chitter-chatter is going on, and I said to him, we call him Papa. I said, Papa, would you like us to pray for you? Because he was sick. He was having congestive heart failure and all these problems. And he was like, and I was so shocked. He goes, yes, I would. Suddenly, from the heavens, surrender. But I asked. Because I believe in the ability of God to reach everybody, even though my brain can't comprehend it sometimes.
Right. It's true.
I think it's important that we learn how to cooperate with faith in spite of our brain tripping. There are times my brain's tripping over stuff, and I go, it doesn't matter, Lord, just do it. Like, you don't know anything about really the gymnastics that we sometimes do to make this church run financially. We're a church with about 300 people involved, right? But we have a facility that's made for 3,000. Right. But we pay the bills for a facility of 3,000, not for 300. You understand? And then on any given Sunday, there's about 200 of us. So you work out the math. That means an exorbitant percentage of the money has to be absorbed into paying for. If we want to paint a wall, like that wall, just that one, that's about 7 or 8 gallons. That one's 7 or 8 gallons. If you want to paint this big here, that's 10 gallons of black. You know what I mean? To get it black enough coats. So it would take about 20, 30 gallons to paint this room. So if you want to paint something, just that, figure it out. Just paint. So if you want to redo it, plaster it, recarpet it, you want the volume of money it requires. Now, I've told you forever that we are laboring for a future people and generation. Because they're going to come, and there's going to be a place for them, and there's going to be more room for them, and there's going to be more classes and training and opportunity to move in the Spirit. And we're going to help them because we're laying a foundation for things to come. So like, we're going to put lights under that balcony, and that's the last thing we have to do once the carpet comes in here soon. And so we can get the approval from the town. But that's just the lights under there. It's probably around $3,400 for the lights. So it's like, if you want to do it, that's just a little tiny space. Right? And so what happens is, sometimes my brain goes, it just added up. The heat bill is $40,000 a year. Divide that by 12. Okay, so figure that out. So then put the projects, the payroll, the bills, the missions, and all the stuff on top of it, and what you have is a cataclysmic, massive amount of money for 300 people. Okay, so sometimes my brain goes click, 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 it gets stuck. How. But I've learned how to walk right past that. And this is what I say to God. I say, God, you know something? My brain is not God. That's what I say. I say stuff like that all the time. My brain isn't God. In fact, this evidence that it can be done is just a perfect opportunity for you to go ahead and do it and show us what you're able to do. We had some guys come in here the other day. They're measuring the carpet. They're getting the installers. And the guy's going, oh, he was up there. You got drums. Bass guitar. What kind of religion is this? Is this Scientology? Yeah, he says, Tom Cruise sits over there. Because they're thinking money. That's what he's thinking. He goes, all I want to know is, where do you get the money in this religion? That's what he said. I said, oh, God. Thank you, Lord. See, and that's what they're thinking. You're taxing the people. You're burdening you're stripping them of their wealth, because that's what these programs show. Some of these religions do. And so when your little ticker's going, and you can see people, they look around and he goes, this facility is amazing. He was out there looking at the stones up front, and he's going, where did you get these? In their brain, it was too expensive. It was too crazy. And I started realizing how expensive it was. I was like, I don't want to think about it. I don't need to think about it. Because, then I have to say, look, my brain is not God. You say it, and we're going to do it because you provide for everything that you say. And you see, and you have to be able to walk past the blockades of your mind. And my father-in-law was a blockade in my mind, and I walked past it and said, God is able, would you like to be prayed for? Yeah. And he goes, yes. And the next thing you know, us and the ministers, we're laying hands on him, we're praying for him. And while we're praying, I said, Papa, yeah, would you like to receive Jesus Christ? Yeah, would you help me? I was like, Margie goes. My mother-in-law started immediately crying. Because her dream is about to come true right in front of her eyes. In their kitchen, right next to the liquor cabinet. The liquor wasn't winning this fight. It wasn't possible. And when Christ came in, I'm telling you, with all the honesty of my heart, the man was altered to such a degree I never saw that other guy again. Never. I never heard another dirty joke. I never heard another womanizing statement. I never saw anybody getting drunk or him getting drunk. I never saw any of that stuff stop. And then him ignoring his wife and making her serve and making her clean and making her work and making her do everything, and he sits there watching TV. It all stopped, and he says, what do you need, honey? What can I do to help you? He's bringing her coffee. He's bringing her food. He's serving her. He's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, going. And for months, we were like, who is this man? But I stepped past my brain. I stepped past all the evidence that was saying it's not possible. And something in me got connected with the God who has no impossibilities. And he came down and he saved them. And I want you to step out in faith, believing that God is able to save to the uttermost all those who need to be saved. Come on, give God praise. You know, the one thing that man never did was tell me he loved me. Those last 7 years, he did nothing but serve and love. And we were at the hospital one day with him, and he goes, Margie, thank you for everything. He held her and he kissed her, and she goes, oh, my pleasure, Dad. And he goes, I just love you so much. He always told Margie he loved her. So I was like, okay, it's time to go. He goes, Chris, I love you. I was like, I'm melting, I was like, wow. I said, I love you too. And as we walked out the door, I knew he was going to die because he never would have said that. I knew he was departing. I broke down in the hallway and started grieving for him while he was alive. I knew it was over. I never spoke to him again. We never spoke to him again. Do you know, I'm telling you, in the spirit of a man who lived for his own carnal purposes his whole life, and the last short 7 years of his life he gave to Jesus and served and loved his family correctly, in the spirit of a man that was weighed down with sin all those years, he was able to detect the day of his death. He could sense it. He knew it. We didn't know it. We thought he was going to be okay. But when he said those words, and I got halfway down through that hospital, my spirit suddenly knew we're never going to see him again. And I busted, started crying right there, grieving like he already died. Margie goes, what's wrong? I said, he's gone. We're never going to see him again. And then she started crying. And he was gone. That night, when they called us 3 in the morning, or 2 something in the morning, and they said, he's basically gone. He's just on life support. Margie woke up and wrote a whole play. Songs, actors, actresses, everything. The woman was like, I thought, what has happened to her? Your dad died. And she went, it was like heaven unloaded on her. And she started writing all this stuff. I'm telling you, you're dealing with a God that doesn't get trapped by impossibilities. He looks at everything as the next opportunity to explode on us. I got to do something. Can I do this? I got to tell you some stuff. I just been thinking about it. Watch this. Likewise, deacons must be they must be reverent, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy for money. You see how good I can read? You think you have thoughts about me. They're not true. When I graduated high school, I couldn't read. I faked it all the time. And if I couldn't figure it out, I'd look at the guy next to me and get his answer. I mean, I could kind of patch it together. I read one book, my whole life, until I was in college. It was called Black Stallion, Black Beauty. It was only because it was a horse, and I was into animals, and I got to get through it. And I was like, then he raised up his mane. Sometimes I'd read the wrong thing. I think, what is that? I was sitting there trying to figure out what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. And I just didn't care to learn. I just didn't care to take time. I was so busy with the forest and hunting and fishing and going outside and girls and, just my mind was running. I didn't want to take time. You have to read in this world. Then they hired me to be an assembler at Universal Instruments. And I'm sitting there building these parts, and I was going through a lot of stuff, and then boom, we ran straight into Jesus, Marge and I. Got saved, and I was like, that thing that happened to my father-in-law happened to me. I turned into another man. All of a sudden, I was like, I could not quench this thirst for the word, for understanding. I go, what about that? And what about that? And I asked so many questions. Back in the day at our church, they assigned the deacons over groups of people to be like their liaison connection to the church. So I found out who mine was, and this guy Keith and his wife, and I went to him. I said, "Can we get together?" He said, "Yeah, come on over for dinner." So Marge and I went over to dinner. He wished I never came over for dinner. I'm sitting there. I'm going, "Now, what about?" I asked him questions. He had no clue. He was like, "Well, I never even thought of that." I had so many questions. I was so hungry. I wasn't a nominal Christian. I was a saved one. The divine nature got inside. And then it touched my soul. And the hunger it produced in my soul led me into such hunger. And I couldn't find anybody to answer my questions. So that led me to the Bible. I said, well, they're not going to tell me. I got to. The Lord said, to Zacchaeus, come down. You should have seen me trying to read this. It was so stupid. I didn't learn. I'm in America. I couldn't read. I sat every break, twice a day, and every lunch hour, that's 3 times a day, doing nothing but reading that Bible 4 years. Within 2 years, I knew the Bible, and I knew how to read. And I could then start quoting the Bible and speaking the Bible, and I learned to read because of my hunger for God. Amen. And now I'm not afraid to read in front of people. Do you know what I used to do in the class? Do you know how you're in rows? It says, okay, we're going to have a couple of you read. I'd go. Immediately, I'd get into the silhouette of the person in front of me. And I'd try to figure if I backed up just so much, she couldn't even see me. And most of the time it worked. They didn't see me. And I'd get skinny, I'd get small, get right behind them. And they'd look out. They wouldn't see me. I wouldn't even peek because then they might catch me. And for years, they just missed me. I just remember one day, I just went like this. And she goes, Chris, why don't you? I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. Please, I just can't do it right now. I almost puked. The thought of reading in front of people, and that girl was right there. I wasn't saved. So I want to impress people, and I'm not going to read. You know what I'm saying? It was just terrible. This is your pastor. A broken, misguided, uneducated, ignorant person. Like a fisherman, like Peter, James, and John, because God's not looking for the clever people of this world. He's not looking for the institutionalized. He's not looking for the high education or the big wealthy job. He's looking for a hungry soul who will say, God, I got to have everything you have for me. And now I read in front of people for a living. And I breathe on people. It's like nuts. It's like when the Spirit comes on me, I can feel it. Oh, and it comes, and people get healed, and things happen, and lives change, and it's because God is pneuma.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? What limitation is standing in front of you? Maybe you got this little lustful problem, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm never going to get over that. The God who nothing's impossible to laughs at your addiction. He doesn't sit there and go, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do? Man, they're really addicted to this. This is not good. No, he doesn't think that. He's like, if he sneezes, you're finished. You understand? We have to start to measure God correctly. I don't think people have a God. I think they just talk about one. If the God you know isn't changing your life, then you don't know the God I know. If the God you know isn't radicalizing your existence, then You haven't invited my God into your life sufficiently. Do you know, I remember in the Bible, I won't even read it, it says, was it the tax collector? And it was like, Jesus starts speaking to him and confronting him about his situation. And all of a sudden, he got it. And he surrendered his life to God. He said, Lord, I will repay double for all I have stolen from the people. Can you imagine how much money that guy gave up? You see, when you are changed, you don't have to go to a counseling session and say, do you think I should pay it back? And then the person there going, well, it's a lot of money. Reasoning. You say, stuck in the brain. We don't get stuck in the brain. We don't get stuck in the brain. The brain's hungry for truth, but truth makes us act. And action speaks louder than words. And you start to repay, beat with interest, everything you stole. Because you're changed. You're changed. A man who spends his whole life wanting to be served and nurtured and cared for and ignoring his wife suddenly becomes the servant of his wife, loving her, feeding her, giving her coffee, telling her oh, honey, are you okay today? I was like, who are you? Hi, honey. We'd walk in, he'd go, hi, kids. I was like, one day my mother-in-law was crying. I said, what's wrong? She goes, my husband's gone. This other guy moved in. She did. She said, I was like, yeah, but this one's really nice. She said, yeah, but I was used to the other one. I said, well, you ought to get used to this one. This one's better. God never does an impartial work inside of anybody. The only way you can stop from changing is to ignore him. Put a wall up between you and him. Hide from the things he's saying to you. Do you know that God is talking to you at 186 miles a second? He's the speed of light. He is talking. He's got more he wants to say to you. He's saying more to you than you could even catch. It's just going right past you. You have to become spiritual to pick it up. Wow, that was awesome. You know what God said to me today? I don't know, but he's been saying stuff to you your whole life. You just aren't listening. You know, he ignores nobody. He isn't making an appointment with you. He's been talking to you your whole life. It's just you've been listening to the wrong voices. I don't personally, can I just say this to you? Confession. I don't personally understand weak Christians. I do not understand it. I do not. I've never been weak. I've never turned from God. I've never considered it. I've never winked and looked back. I never thought, gee, what would my life been if I didn't? I've never glanced back because I know what's back there. And once I left it, I'm not going back. I'm going forward. I'm not saying I've never made a mistake. I'm never saying I've never done anything wrong. I'm saying I never looked back for a life outside of God. There is no life outside of God. I'll be a guard at a prison worse than the prisoner behind the door if I went back.
Right.
There's no hope there, people.
Right. True.
You will never satisfy the deepest cravings within you with food.
Right. True.
You never will. It will. I mean, I had a peach pie the other day. Whoa, I got peach trees, and they were dumping all over the grounds. I told the grandkids, $3 a peach pie. So we buy the ingredients too, but they're out there whipping them together. Then they got some berries to put in there. But when it was over, I still craved the things of God. You can't satisfy this thing with anything. A spouse will never satisfy the deepest part of you. Never. I've got a great spouse. She's very satisfying in many ways, but she can't substitute her for, it's like saccharin for sugar. You understand? God is the ultimate satisfaction. You can offer me a big, thick jelly donut fresh out of the oven, and I'll eat it. but it won't substitute. You can offer me land and tractors and forests and everything that I love, and it will never substitute this life in God. You understand? There's no other life. There's no other purpose. There's nothing about this world that you can never be satisfied. In fact, the richest people in the world have proven positively that things will never satisfy. I look at some of these actors. They have the most stunning, beautiful wives, and they cheat on them. What are you doing with her? Look at your wife. Because you can't be naturally satisfied enough to stop the cravings of your spirit for new things. I think that's why people go into perversion, because they're searching for that thing that's going to finally put an end to their cravings. And it is Jesus. It is the life of God. It is the Son of the Most High. It's Him. It's Him. There's no satisfaction in anything else. And I believe in prosperity. I believe in gaining ground. I believe in breaking the poverty spirit. I believe in helping people. I believe in healing bodies. I believe in delivering people. But none of that will satisfy you. It's only in God. I mean, one of my grandkids did something one day, and he said, "Oh, Papa, I'm sorry, I broke that. Something in the house." I says, "You have no idea the price I'm willing to pay for you." I said, "I will sell this whole property, the house, everything for you to save you." She said, "You would do that for me?" I said, "More than that." And that's just the nature of God. That's how He is. That's how. In fact, He did it. He said, "I got to cash in." It came to the earth. We're just like our dad. That's all. I'm His image. I'm His likeness. There's a reason I'm always hugging and kissing you people, because He wants to hug and kiss all you people. I walked into the director's office tonight, and the girls were all there eating, and they make up the run sheets and everything. I walk in and says, "Hey, how are the daughters doing tonight?" Why did I say it? I didn't plan it. It's because they're daughters. They're God's daughters. These are my daughters. You understand? We love with the same love that God loved us. That's what this thing's about. One day I was walking through the house and I said, "God, I didn't pray today, but this is prayer." Because if you don't kneel down or sit there or light a candle or do something, you don't feel like you didn't pray. I'm talking to Him all the time. And I'm thinking, I got to pray. Oh, that's right. This is prayer. I'm still a Catholic inside. You know, my dad told me my whole life, you're a Catholic and you're going to die a Catholic. He goes, "You have the indelible mark." I said, "Where is it?" Where is it? But I feel sometimes like if I don't do something traditional, it's not real. So then I like to go against those things. My mind is not God. You are. It's nice talking to you while I brush my teeth. What do you want to do tonight? Then you just take a napkin and tuck it in here and make a collar, then you feel more holy. How's that, sir? Do you know that you can pray driving? You can pray raking dirt. You can pray mowing. You can pray working. You can pray doing everything. You can thank God for the beautiful colors that are starting to come out in the forest. You can pray. You can talk. You go skydiving, and you will pray. No! You should. Paul says, pray continuously. He said, don't stop. All right, so let's get an analogy. I'm going to avoid that one. We'll go for this one. So let's just say you start kissing your wife, and God says, kiss and don't stop kissing. Pray and don't stop connection. Don't stop the connection. That's what he's saying. Don't stop the connection. Stay connected. Stay connected. So sometimes your little brain goes, and you drift into some fantasy. I'm going to have a big yard and a fence. And you drift it off, and then a couple hours later you come back and you go, oh, I forgot to pray. While you're wasting time talking about what you could have done, you could say, hi, God.
It's true.
Thanks for showing me that vision. Would you give me that fence? And that yard? Use your faith. Don't sit there and mumble and complain. Gee, I should have had a 401k. Hey, how's that sound funny? I should have been saving all these years. I should have a 401k. Lord, would you give me what I could have had if I didn't follow your will and do all this? Would you replenish that so that I won't go without it? Use your faith. And then I like to say things like, I will never run out of money. The church will never run out of money. Well, why am I saying that? Because I was so hungry for God that I learned how to read the Bible, and I kept reading what God says, and I ignored what men were saying to the degree I had to leave the church in different places because they were preaching against what God says. And now I'm persecuted because I believe the Bible and not the doctrines of men. They can't stop us. They couldn't stop John the Baptist. They couldn't stop Jesus. They couldn't stop Paul. They couldn't stop anybody who put their trust in God. In fact, I read today in the Bible, in the book of Acts, Peter said, you judge to the church leaders whether we ought to obey you or God. As for us, we will declare the things we have seen. And they got beaten, and they got imprisoned. And you say, whoa, they weren't blessed. Don't you kid yourself. Don't ever judge somebody's success by the crowd that doesn't follow them, or by the money they don't seem to have, or by the persecution that they're receiving. Because usually those are the guys who are doing God's will. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But I do know this, that if you'll give your whole heart to God, you won't think about what you're going to say. Because the Spirit will possess you deeply enough that you're not afraid to let it go. Do not worry about what you will say, for it will be given to you in that hour. I know that scripture. I know that God. I know the impossibility of Christianity standing up in front of people and reading and talking. But now it's my living. It's my way of life. This is what I'm called to do. Dad's like someone says, I can't see blood. If I see blood, I pass out. And you get called to be a transfusion person. All you do is deal with people's blood all day long. You understand? Your limitations are a joke.
I agree. That's awesome. True.
Did you ever see the movie The Matrix? It's a lot like that. It's a lot like that. Take the blue pill or red pill, and and then all of a sudden the illusion goes off, and you see what's real. And I'm telling you, this life in many ways is really like that. There's like an illusion that our society believes is true. It's not true. In fact, the Bible says what seems to be right is not right. What is promoted and spoken as wisdom is foolishness. And what is deemed foolish is the wisdom of God. And God has blacked the wise with the foolishness of the gospel. So that he could outsmart them. That's basically what it says. He outsmarted them. He's all the wisdom and the depth of our God. That he blocked the way of the wise and opened the way to babes. Because the simple people, and it doesn't mean that they weren't educated. It means they stepped out of the educated brain and they touched something with their heart And God met them in the heart. They became simple in the natural, and they became wealthy in the spirit, and they got instruction from heaven. And they started to love one woman. They started to love one man. They started to honor their neighbors. They started to pay their bills and be righteous in their actions towards everyone around them. They started doing the right thing, and they were spoken evil of. Their children did not go out and date and try people out and have sex before marriage. They kept themselves because the wisdom of heaven says there's a future in me. And the world says they're foolish. But God says they're my children. And the reward for these is immense. You can't even measure it. Don't be tricked. I'm not fooled. You don't even know what goes on. It's just like, I wish I could just carry you around with me and hear ministers all over the world what's going on. Today I talked to South Africa, to Western Canada, to the southern United States, and this is my life. This is when I talk to people all over the place, and they're all calling, and they're all trying to find their way, and they're all trying to figure it out. One guy called me and says, you know that thing you taught about the overlap of two covenants? This minister. He goes, I think I'm getting it. Because I've been taught wrong for so long, I struggle with it. He goes, when you told me the first time, I thought, what? He goes, the second time I was like, that's a good point. He goes, now I'm going, wow, it's everywhere. From a kid who couldn't read. Can I humbly say this to you? I don't know why God chose you to be a part of this. The same way I don't know why he chose me. But we have it. It's an insight from heaven. It's in the scriptures and people can't see it. Tony, is that true? Why are you here? Sonny, why are you here? It's the revelation. They moved from Puerto Rico to Florida, serving God in churches, and then they heard, and they had to come for the revelation. You are going to train pastors. You're going to train leaders. You're going to have networks that are going to be touched by what is inside of you. They're already doing it. They're already communicating with people. Don't underestimate this thing, people. God always births things in a cradle, in a manger. Yeah, it's always a baby born in weakness, so that the power will be of God, not of man. It's always a preacher who can't talk and can't read. It's always someone who doesn't know where they're going becomes the person to tell everybody where they should be going. I want to see you all prosper in the Lord. Come on, no part-timers. No part-time worshipers. No part-time lovers. No part-time givers. No part-time servants to one another. No part-time love in the body of Christ. We are lovers of the body. That means we forgive each other and we walk together past our issues. And our issues are the perfect place for God to train us how to forgive, because he wants us to be like him. The whole reason we're in the flesh is because he wants us to learn faith. You have to have obstacles to learn faith. When God looked at nothing, he created everything. It was an obstacle, and he was a God of faith. By faith, we know God created all things. So then God thrusts us into the natural realm and goes, okay, swim. Where are you, Lord? I cried to thee from the ends of the earth. You know, and there's all this stuff. At first, you start out carnal like that, but eventually you learn, my dad. You're involved with me. You're here with me. I have your spirit. I have your divine nature. I am what you are. You are what I am. And I have authority to change things because you have granted it to me. You grow from this weakness into this strength so that you can become a factor in the earth. You can take dominion over stuff.
I agree. Yeah, it's awesome.
My deaf ear is already slated for removal. Impossible things are always possible to God. And they're possible to us because we have his image and likeness. We are undaunted. One hiccup and you're healed. You just have a moment of faith. Boom, everything's changed. It's over. But don't let the first love go. Don't let your first love go. I love my Father. I love him. He's never disappointed me. He's let me go through a few things. But I came out better. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. Live for God. Live for God. Live for God. Hallelujah.